In this video, we'll take a look at listening part 1. We're going to give you some information, tips and strategies for this part of the exam, and also give you the chance to practice your listening in exam-style conditions. In particular, we're going to focus on understanding the gist or the general meaning of a conversation. Before you get started, it's a good idea to print out the PDF handout of this unit so you can easily make notes and underline key information during the listening tasks. Or if you don't have a printer, you can download it to a different device and use a highlighting tool for note-taking. The complete listening test lasts for about 40 minutes. There are 4 parts to the test. In part 1, you listen to 3 extracts that are usually in the form of dialogues. In part 2, you listen to a long monologue, which is one person talking about a specific topic. In part 3, you listen to an interview. Again, this is a long listening between 2 or 3 people. And in part 4, once again, you listen to 5 extracts of people talking about a similar topic. In every part of the listening, you get to hear the recording twice. In the listening test, you need to write all your answers on a separate answer sheet. So you don't need to do this during the test as you're listening. You can just write your answers and your notes on the question paper, but you have 5 minutes at the end of the test to transfer all of your answers to the separate answer sheet. So when you do this, make sure that you transfer your answers very carefully so you don't make any mistakes and you don't lose any unnecessary marks. You get 1 mark for each correct answer in the listening test. So that gives you 30 marks in total. If you get 26 out of 30, this is a C2 pass. This means you've done extremely well in your exam. If you get 18 out of 30 or more, this is a C1 pass. And if you get 13 out of 30 or more, then you would get a B2 pass. In listening part 1, you hear 3 short extracts, which are usually dialogues or conversations on different themes. So there is no connection between the 3 dialogues that you will hear. There are 2 questions for each extract, so that means a total of 6 questions to answer. You have to answer 2 multiple choice questions with 3 options for each conversation. So in each case, choose answer A, B, or C for each one. This part of the test assesses how well you are able to identify the gist or the overall meaning or the main idea of a conversation or what the 2 people are speaking about. You also need to be able to identify the speaker's attitudes and opinions on the topic, as well as whether the speakers agree or disagree about it. Let's go over some tips which can help you to do better in this part of the exam. First of all, be prepared for different accents. During this course, you'll probably get used to my accent, or you are already used to your teacher's accent, so you feel like your listening skills are pretty good. However, in the exam, you get to hear accents from all over, so the UK, the USA, Australia, New Zealand, and some of these accents can be really hard to understand. In this course, we'll expose you to some of these, but you can also train your ear by watching a wide variety of movies and TV series or listening to podcasts and audiobooks. This is fun, but also very good exam training for you. Before listening, it's important to read the prompts and the questions to infer meaning. So read, underline the keywords, and try to guess what the answer might be based upon the information you have. This can help you understand the recording when you hear it and find the right answer more easily. It's important to note, though, that the words you hear will be different than the words you underlined in the question. Next, listen for gist. So that means listen for general information without too many details. So you're not listening for specific details here, okay? You're listening for the main idea, the speaker's meaning, attitude, and opinions. It's important to look out for red herrings or distractors. So Cambridge likes red herrings. These are statements that take your attention away from the correct answer, or they lead you in the wrong direction. So if you see a word or phrase in the question, and then you hear that exact word or phrase in the listening, it's probably not the right answer. To help you spot these red herrings, to see these distractors, I suggest waiting until you've heard the whole extract once before answering any questions. And to consolidate, take time to analyze the audio scripts. It can take a little bit longer, but by studying the transcript, you'll be able to see which of Cambridge's traps you fell into or which red herrings you missed. You'll also be able to pick up useful discourse markers like right, well, anyway, mind you, actually, so you can underline these, make a note of these, and try and use them in your own speaking. Listen to the instructions for the practice task. You will hear 3 short conversations in which people are talking about different topics. Unlike in the exam, you will hear each audio only once. Listen for the gist or the general ideas, attitudes, or opinions of the speakers. Do not listen for specific information. You will have a minute after each recording to make notes.
I've just got back from visiting my grandfather. It's been ages since I last saw him. I really miss him now that we live so far apart.
Where does he live?
Up in Scotland, in a tiny fishing village. It's beautiful up there. It really suits his character, as it's such a serene and isolated place. And yet there's a really warm community spirit.
You always got away with murder because you were the baby of the family.
No, I was just better behaved than you.
Sure you were. That's why you were always finding excuses for all the things you did and blaming stuff on us when you were about to get caught.
It's not my fault I was smarter than you.
Cunning would be a better way of putting it. It had nothing to do with intelligence. In fact, you were a bit of a dunce at primary school.
Oh, cheers. Well, I certainly made up for it, didn't I? Where's your degree then, clever clogs?
How are things between you and Brian, Jenny?
Oh, you know, the same old situation. I don't see why he bothered to propose. I doubt if we will ever get round to tying the knot. I think his divorce really affected him more deeply than he's prepared to admit.
Don't be so harsh on him. You need to look on the bright side. You have a great relationship, and the very fact that he's proposed shows that he's committed to you. He just needs a bit more reassurance. Be supportive and have some fun together. You two both work too hard.
Take a moment now to compare your answers to the suggested answers below. Press pause and press play again when you're ready to continue.
You'll hear 3 different extracts. For questions 1 to 6, choose the answer A, B or C, which fits best according to what you hear. There are 2 questions for each extract.
First, you will listen to extract 1. Before you listen, read through the questions and underline the keywords. I will give you 20 seconds to do this task. Thank you. Now let's check your answers. In question 1, the key information is about the man's reaction. So what is his attitude, or what is his opinion of the majority of visiting bird watchers? Is it option A, that they speed, that they drive too fast? Is it option B, that they are ignorant, so that they don't have a good understanding or a good knowledge of one of nature's delights? Or is it C, that he doesn't understand why, so what is the reason that they come to the area? In question 2, speakers is an important bit of information to highlight, because there it's the plural form. So we know that in this case, both speakers need to agree on some particular point made in the extract. So is that point A, that they are knowledgeable, that they know a lot about the local wildlife? Is it B, that they both work for some wildlife conservation group in the area? Or is it C, that they resent or they think badly of people who admire the local wildlife?
Extract 1. You will hear 2 people talking about wildlife in the area they live in. Now look at questions 1 and 2.
You know, I find it quite astounding the way people flock through this area to go bird watching, and yet en route they are completely oblivious to the marvel of the birds here on the lowlands.
I know. Every Friday night when I'm driving home from the shop, the motorway plays host to a rush of weekend visitors buzzing past the flat lowlands on their way to the hillier areas of Dartmoor and Exmoor.
It seems it's a local's well-kept secret that the starlings' dance in the sky here is probably one of the best natural sights there is to be seen in the area. It makes me want to stop them all and tell them.
Maybe it's not such a bad thing. They'd start to build tea shops and car parks and the whole area would be ruined.
Now you will hear the recording again.
You know, I find it quite astounding the way people flock through this area to go bird watching, and yet en route they are completely oblivious to the marvel of the birds here on the lowlands.
I know. Every Friday night when I'm driving home from the shop, the motorway plays host to a rush of weekend visitors buzzing past the flat lowlands on their way to the hillier areas of Dartmoor and Exmoor.
It seems it's a local's well-kept secret that the starlings' dance in the sky here is probably one of the best natural sights there is to be seen in the area. It makes me want to stop them all and tell them.
Maybe it's not such a bad thing. They'd start to build tea shops and car parks and the whole area would be ruined.
Let's take a look at your answers. So for question 1, the answer is B. The man believes that the vast majority of visiting bird watchers are ignorant of one of nature's delights. And for question 2, the answer is A. The speakers seem to be knowledgeable about their local wildlife. So how many of those did you get correct? Okay, so now let's take a look at the audio script to analyze why you got the question right, or if you didn't, where you went wrong. Take a moment and look at the transcript. Try to find the exact quotation that shows us that the man believed that the majority of birdwatchers are ignorant to nature's delights. Press pause and press play when you'd like to check your answer. Did you highlight the right part? Oblivious is a synonym of ignorant. Now you will hear extract 2. Before you listen, please read through the questions and underline any keywords if necessary. I will give you some time for this task. Thank you. Now let's check what information you underlined. So as you can see in this extract, there isn't very much to underline because the questions and the answers are both quite short. However, you might want to underline the expression caused the disturbance because you need to listen and say what caused the trouble in the middle of the night.
Extract 2. You will hear two people talking about a disturbance in the night. Now look at questions 3 and 4.
Did you hear that terrible racket last night?
Yes, it woke me up.
It sounded like a battleground. I thought it was a gang of youngsters messing around at first.
I went to investigate because I thought we might have prowlers.
There has been a spate of burglaries in this area recently. I did consider calling the police, but I couldn't see anyone out of the window.
Well, from the mess around our rubbish bins this morning, it was obvious what it was, as there was litter everywhere where it had been looking for food.
Our bins weren't touched, but I'm glad my cat was in, or it could have been eaten.
Now you will hear the recording again.
Did you hear that terrible racket last night?
Yes, it woke me up.
It sounded like a battleground. I thought it was a gang of youngsters messing around at first.
I went to investigate because I thought we might have prowlers.
There has been a spate of burglaries in this area recently. I did consider calling the police, but I couldn't see anyone out of the window.
Well, from the mess around our rubbish bins this morning, it was obvious what it was, as there was litter everywhere where it had been looking for food.
Our bins weren't touched, but I'm glad my cat was in, or it could have been eaten.
Let's now take a look at your answers. So the answer to question 3 is B. The man and the woman are neighbours. And the answer for question 4 is C. A wild animal probably caused the disturbance. Right, so let's go and look at the audio transcript to see why these are the correct answers. Take a look at this part of the audio transcript and try to highlight or underline the quotations that support your answers to questions 3 and 4. First, let's analyze the options for question 1. So this question is a little bit tricky. You have to try and infer the answer from looking at the context. So because you can see there in the last 2 sentences, the man says, our rubbish bins. And then the woman contrasts that with saying, well, our bins. So the implied information there is that they have different bins. So if that's the case, then they can't be flatmates and they can't be married because they don't live in the same place. So that excludes answer A and answer C, which means by process of elimination, they must be neighbours. Answer B. That's a tough one. Now let's look at question 2. Okay, so we know that it's not A. We know that it's not a cat because the lady says in the final sentence, "I'm glad my cat was in." So that tells us that the cat was not involved. It can't be B because the woman also says she couldn't see anyone out of the window. So there wasn't a person or a burglar involved. So the answer must be C, which is supported by 2 quotes. Number 1, the man says it had been looking for food. And the woman says, in reference to her cat, that it could have been eaten. So both of those suggest to us that it is some kind of wild animal. Now it's time for extract 3. Before you listen, please take some time to read through the questions and underline the keywords. I will give you some time to do this task. Thank you. Now let's compare our keywords. The keyword in question 5 is woman, so we need to focus on her opinion rather than on the man's. So is the answer A, that there are no obvious benefits to the landfill sites? She doesn't see the purpose or the point of having them. Is it B, that they cause disease and illness amongst local people? Or is it C, that they are not as bad as incineration? So they are bad, but they're just not that bad in comparison to burning. In question 6, the key language is plans. We need to focus on what they say about plans. So is it A, that they have been temporarily, so rather than permanently stopped? Is it B, that they will never be implemented, so they will never be realized? Or is it C, that they have been stopped by protesters who are blocking the research? So in C, both of these pieces of information must be true for C to be the correct answer.
Extract 3. You will hear 2 people discussing a site where domestic rubbish is officially dumped. Now look at questions 5 and 6.
I can see why people are campaigning to block the new landfill site, as the one just outside town is pretty smelly and unsightly. But on the other hand, it provides food for many species of birds.
Well, yes, it's a fact that some species have seen their numbers increase substantially due to the abundance of insects and worms found on or around the dumps.
If the new site isn't opened, and in fact the original one may be closed, it could send the bird population into decline again in this area.
But it has been argued that birds feeding on these sites regularly die of poisoning.
I don't know if the council will opt for incineration instead of creating more tips, but I think that the smoke from the incinerators causes more pollution than the tips do.
I've heard that the whole thing has been put on hold until more research can be carried out.
Now you will hear the recording again.
I can see why people are campaigning to block the new landfill site, as the one just outside town is pretty smelly and unsightly. But on the other hand, it provides food for many species of birds.
Well, yes, it's a fact that some species have seen their numbers increase substantially due to the abundance of insects and worms found on or around the dumps.
If the new site isn't opened, and in fact the original one may be closed, it could send the bird population into decline again in this area.
But it has been argued that birds feeding on these sites regularly die of poisoning.
I don't know if the council will opt for incineration instead of creating more tips, but I think that the smoke from the incinerators causes more pollution than the tips do.
I've heard that the whole thing has been put on hold until more research can be carried out.
Let's take a look at your answers. So the answer for 5 is C, that according to the woman, landfill sites are not as bad as incineration. So in other words, incineration is much worse than the landfill sites. And the answer for question 6 is A, that the plans to build a new landfill site have been temporarily stopped. So how many of those did you get right? Okay, good. So let's take a look at the audio script to see why these are the correct answers. Take a look at this part of the audio transcript and try to highlight or underline the quotations that support your answers to questions 5 and 6. The audio script for extract 3 is actually rather long, so we'll just look at a deducted or shortened version of it. For question 5, there is a clear quotation that supports C as the answer. The woman says, "I think that the smoke from the incinerators causes more pollution than the tips do." Now, a tip in British English is another word for a rubbish dump or a landfill site. So her argument is that the incinerators are more harmful to the environment than the landfill sites. And for question 6, when it comes to the plans, the speakers do mention the protesters. They say people are campaigning to block the new landfill site. However, they do not mention blocking any research. So this is a red herring. The answer is only partially true, so it cannot be C. Again, there is a clear quotation that supports A as the answer. It says the whole thing has been put on hold. So to put something on hold means to stop it for the time being. And that brings us to the end of listening part 1. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I really hope that it's been helpful for you. But before we wrap up, I just want to give you one final tip. And listen up, okay, because it is a good one. Many candidates think that they don't need to worry about time management in the listening, but that is not true. Good time management can earn you valuable extra minutes in your exam. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, you are taking a course to prepare yourself for the exam, and that's great. Good for you, because not everyone does that. So you will know what to expect in different parts of the exam. You won't need to listen to Cambridge's long, slow introduction that gives instructions for every task. You can skip the introduction and go straight to part 1, start reading and underlining keywords. And to be honest, you can skip the introductions to the other parts too when you get there. You will know what to do, so there's no need to wait. You can just go ahead and do it. Okay, and on that note, please do go ahead and do the practice activities that we have linked to this video. So good luck with those, and I will see you in listening part 2.